The reality at the beginning of March, after 4 or 5 weeks of warnings, was it became apparent that there was no plan in the form of the NHS or the DHSC for dealing with a coronavirus pandemic. Yes or no?
I'm not sure I can. I think the plan wasn't sophisticated enough to deal with the crisis it was facing. I don't think I can answer whether there was no plan. Because
there was no plan for coronavirus, was there, Mr. Reynolds? You know there wasn't. You know that as a matter of strategy, there had never been any debate about a coronavirus. The United Kingdom strategy was based expressly upon a pandemic influenza. Do you agree there was no plan for coronavirus?
I'm not sufficiently expert to say whether the plans which were pre-existing were replicable for the nature of the crisis we're doing and to what extent.
In number 10, there was an appreciation at the beginning of March that there were no plans to bring together the activities of the other government departments. Yes or no?
Well, we had the existing structures and they were inadequate for what we were doing.
Did you have plans to deal with the crisis which had broken upon the United Kingdom government in the first week in March?
Well, I mean, as I say, there is a standard set of protocols which are actually Cabinet Office protocols for dealing with crisis. Where I agree with you is they were inadequate to deal with the crisis we were confronted with.
And the Cabinet Office failed in its prime obligation of coordinating the position, including other government departments, to ensure that there were plans and a proper strategy in place. Correct?
Correct.
And number 10, failed to get on top of the Cabinet Office and to ensure that there were plans before that time. Correct.
Actually, on the email traffic I saw, Dominic Cummings, to his credit, was asking to see the plans about a week or 10 days previously.
And what was the answer, Mr. Reynolds?
I don't know. I'd have to ask Imran.
You know that he asked repeatedly for plans, and there were none, as far as he could tell. You're nodding.
Well,
is that a yes?
I'm acknowledging that's what you're saying. As I say, I think you need to check with both Dominic Cummings and Imran and others.
And what did you make of the plans for quarantining, for shielding, for scaled-up test and trace, and potentially lockdown that you looked at in the course of these days in early March in number 10?
I wasn't reviewing the plans, but what I would say is it was very clear once the crisis started that the plans were inadequate to the extent they existed. And so what essentially is happening in that period of the early crisis is everyone is having to operate without a proper playbook.
The playbook, do you mean a plan by playbook?
Yes, I think there is a difference between a playbook and a plan in the sense that a playbook gives you the framework to operate, and I suppose maybe it's a point for me rather, maybe but I think given the nature of COVID, it seems to me to have a fully worked up plan across every single eventuality is unlikely to be as successful as targeting the key areas and making sure you have really clear plans in place in those specific areas.
But regardless of whether it's a playbook or a rule book or a plan or anything, whatever there was, Mr. Reynolds, was grossly deficient.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.